Fantastic. And ladies and gentlemen, we are live. And today I'm really excited. It's 3:30 a.m. Right here in Singapore, early Friday morning. But over there in Prague, in Europe, right, it's 9:30 p.m., I believe. So how's things going there, Aidan? And tell us the updates from your city. How are you doing?
Oh, pretty good. We're, still in a sort of like semi-lockdown thing here, but it's all right. Everybody's getting around and going, still going out and everything, but no big crowds, as you can imagine.
That's fantastic.
I just had like the lockdown, and now I've got like 8 weeks of children's holiday, so I probably know my children a lot better than I want to,
And I think this is the number one common feedback. The best thing, even though like nobody is thrilled, to see, of course, people dying from coronavirus, right? The best thing is that you have more time now with your family than ever before. So I understand you have a wonderful family of with kids as well, and this time, allows you to get closer to your family, right? And spend more quality time with your family.
Yeah, it's good. It's the thing is with they learn all their English from Peppa Pig, so it's like constantly being referred to as Daddy Pig all the time, Anyway, it's good though. It's good. The thing is also I'm getting a lot of work done as well, which is it's funny. I work from home anyway, but I think having the kids around, it sort of forces me to to spend more time on doing the stuff I really like, as opposed to just constantly looking for work all the time.
That's fantastic, because I remember my kids when they were slightly younger as well. Peppa Pig was their biggest inspiration, but I guess as they get older, right, they will have other influences, of course, and different artists or characters you look up to. I'm sure in a couple of years' time they'll be discovering your work, your body of work, which are really incredible. And you can't imagine, for me personally, right now, the 16-year-old me is jumping up and down, because the person who is singularly responsible for all the incredible artwork design on all my favorite KMFDM records is right now, on my show, on my podcast, and we are having a conversation live. So it's really incredible, after so many years, right? I finally get a chance to get to know you more, and of course, doing this face-to-face virtually. Maybe we'll just dive straight into some of your body of work, your incredible body of work. And I think nothing epitomizes your career more than all these great album covers that you designed for KMFDM Records. And the one that I remember picking up on the shelf in Tower Records Singapore was the Angst album. I think it was 1991 or 92 when I saw that album, and I was trying to imagine how it sounded like, because the artwork was just incredible. There's a lot of propaganda artwork. I think with a mix of sexual tension as well. I think you probably get it a lot, right? Maybe walk us through, the design process for that particular album.
Sure. Well, normally I get in touch with Sasha. He has some ideas about what he wants to do with the album, and then I come up with about 6 or 7 rough ideas. He picks one, and then there's like a process of about 2 or 3 weeks where we go backwards and forwards and just tweak things. He's very involved in the process, Hey, there you go. That stuff looks great.
It looks great. Your gallery looks great, because there's so much detail and so much, attention to details, especially in all your art. And when I look at it, one of the things that struck me when I was looking at it for the first time, especially the Angst cover, right, was definitely the curves of the woman on the cover. Of course, I think this is the one that I'm talking about, right? Uh-huh. And of course, there's a lot of great attention to detail, and how, there's always a lot of scenes of the city, right? Either it's, in some form of distress, or, like there is in a chaotic state where, it basically depicts and it reflects what's going on, in culture and society at the same time. And maybe could you tell us, how you actually ended up working in the music industry with a band like KMFDM?
Well, up until 84, I've been doing my own magazines, Brute, Rage, a couple of others. And a friend of mine who owned Ram Records, Peter Lay, he just had a hit with a guy called Gerald, and KMFDM's had been suggested that they go with Ram Records. And he got in touch with me and he said, "Have you ever done the album covers?" And I said, "Yeah, sure I have." He said, "Can you do this one?" And I said, "What's the name of the band?" He said, "KMFDM." I said, "Well, what can you tell me about them?" He said, I'll send you a cassette." Well, I didn't even have a cassette player, a record player, or anything in those days. So I said, "Look, just tell me, what are they like?" He says, "They're German industrial." So I came up with this image, which to me spoke of this kind of Weimar, but like, it was kind of modern Weimar type of look, mixture of Art Deco and propaganda. And apparently everybody really liked it so much that they started selling more records, and the rest is history. I've been doing it ever since, like almost 40 years now, I think.
This is brilliant. And just looking through all your various artwork, and each one has a brilliant story to tell, right? But we're not going to dive into each and every album cover artwork. Maybe we'll just dive straight into the latest one. I think it's Paradise, which is an incredible record. And some, from the online Facebook groups, they are saying that Paradise is like a return to form for the band, right? And of course, the best thing about checking out a new album is that we're getting a new artwork courtesy of Aidan Hughes of Brute. So maybe can you also walk us through the entire process of creating the artwork for Paradise? I think we're going to maybe jump right into the page for KMFDM Paradise sketches and the final art. Maybe you can walk us through it. Yeah.
Which is the one? Paradise. Yeah. Okay. Well, that was a 2-part one. There was another one before that. The name escapes me as usual. But what it was Sasha and I, we've both got kids, and a lot of these album covers and a lot of artwork that's going around these days is very, very depressing, and it's not really filled with hope. And what we wanted to do, you've got some of the rough artwork there. What we wanted to do was show that, yes, there has been an apocalypse. Yes, there is, everything is destroyed, but the children, that we bring into the world, we shouldn't worry about them so much, because they're the future. Whatever the future holds, our children will be dealing with it. And I think in some ways, we've got to invest with them more hope. We've got to make them stronger. And the album cover is just showing that idea of the parents not being afraid to go into the future, not trying to hide so much, but braving it out, if you like. And I just see a lot of negativity in artwork, especially with a lot of the album covers. I see very gloomy, gritty, blood splattered sort of stuff, and it's depressing. I think that we need a more hopeful outlook, and that's what I tried to do with that. And also, if you look at this picture, one of the evolutions of it was that he started out with weapons. He had like a bow and arrow and a gun and blah blah blah, different things. What we did was we removed all the weapons, but still had the arrows and the ammo belts, to show that he was like casting off his weapons to go into this new future with his daughter. And I think things like that, people don't always see that, but that's the sort of messages I like to put into my work. So it's not so blatantly in your face. I mean, it is in your face, but there are always some little details that people can look at and see. Yeah, see what he's doing here. He's saying, because a lot of my early work was full of guns. It was all guns and tanks, and I kind of wanted to sort of distance myself from that a little bit, because there's so much of that in the news anyway. And as I say, we're being bombarded by this imagery. So it was a 2-part one. The first one was the guy rescuing the woman from the rubble of a destroyed city, and the story was that he had a child with her, and she died, and he carried on being single parent. And I'm a house husband, so I can dig that.
This is really incredible, and I think some of the fans also agree that the story, especially when you are telling us about the backstory behind the design process for Paradise is really incredible and really badass. That's what Joe LaGrassa is saying. And of course, Athena, shout out to Athena as well. So
Hey,
they're all
Athena.
big fans of yours, and they've been waiting for this episode. I think ever since we announced it on our Facebook news feed, I think a week ago. And of course, it's amazing to know that in a career, you have designed so many incredible album artwork that has become classic. So, of course, your body of work is not just albums, right?
And
yes,
also this
Bruce,
book,
tell us about this collection and why is it, why did it take like 30 over years before it's finally available in a hard copy format that, fans like us can finally order online and finally hold it in our hands or, just put it on our table and admire it from afar?
Well, what happened was in the mid-80s, the little pamphlet became very, very successful, and we were on TV, and we were on publishing deals, working for magazines and newspapers. But we did so much of this work that the paperback that came out didn't adequately cover the sheer amount of stories that we'd done for all these different magazines. So what I wanted to do was to compile them all together. And I was doing so with my friend Malcolm, who we did the book with, and he died. And so one of the things that he made me promise was to make sure that I got this book finished. And so almost 40 years later, here it is. And I'm really proud of it. It's been a long time coming. We've tried lots and lots of publishers, and I have to say that even some of the publishers that we worked with back in the 80s, who were like very, very open-minded, are now not so open-minded, and I was quite surprised by that. And so I was just about to self-publish when Eyewear Press got in touch. They are also Nick Cage's publisher. Sorry, Nick Cave's publisher. God, not Nick Cage, I'm movie mad. And they got in touch and they said, yeah, we really will do it, and we want to do the whole thing uncensored. And I was like, great, have you read this? And they had read it, and yeah, I'm just so amazed. I mean, because as I say, the originals were just these small books made purposely that size so children could get them in their blazer pockets or people could fit them in their back pockets of their jeans. And but we spent over a year reading 1,000 books in preparation to make Brute. And it started out as a little private joke between me and Malcolm, who wrote most of the stories. And I just thought, for so long I've been doing things where people would, committees would come in and tell me, you can't have this, you can't have that. And it was so great that Malcolm and I just had this private joke, really, about lampooning traditional forms of literature, these men's magazines and these women's romances, that we basically read them because we wanted to make money from selling books. And then when we actually did get into publishing, we realized that it's a real middle class thing, being an author. How many people have got time to take 2 or 3 years off to write a book? I mean, you really have to have some support, and that's why you don't get any proletarian writers anymore. And Brute is as proletarian as it comes. We wrote this while burning our furniture in the fireplace while we were on unemployment benefits. We would take the books out in the street and go to pubs, hang around outside schools, selling them pub festivals, and we made 95% of every issue that we sold. And when we went into traditional publishing, we got a big book deal. We sold 30,000 copies. We were the #1 paperback in the UK for about 2 weeks, and we made nothing, made absolutely nothing. So that kind of put me off going the legitimate route. But what I like about Eyewear is that they give most of their money to the artists, and they do it by selling online. And the percentage is really nice, and they've done an absolute. I really wish you could be here to smell and touch this book, Wayne, because it's just glorious. I'm just so glad I've managed to do this for Malcolm. That's all I can say. Whether people like it or buy it or not is not important, but I did it for my best friend, and I'm really glad it's come out.
This is so amazing, and it's just that it's a shame that your buddy Malcolm is not here anymore, and we can't actually have both of you on the show together and interview you and tell us stories about this book. But it's still creating a really warm, fuzzy feeling, inside of us to see this finally being held in your hands, and of course made available for all of us to actually pre-order our copy, right? And we can just maybe stick up the URL as well on the screen shortly, so that people can go to the website and check out this book. And of course, this is an epic collection of Brut's illustrated short stories, which you created with author Malcolm Bennett in the mid-'80s. So there's a lot of story behind it, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears behind it. And it's something that, we can fully get behind. And I think fans should go check it out. Yeah. Can we tell us what we're looking at?
I'll just show you some of the covers. These are some of the covers we did. And these will all be in the back of the book. And people who pre-ordered will get a special limited edition pack of these beautiful covers as postcards, So, yeah,
wow.
That's what you get for pre-ordering, guys.
And I like the thickness of this book. It's at least 280 pages thick, right?
280, more than 280, I think it is, yeah.
So it must really, weigh quite heavily. But of course, it's all worth, pre-ordering it and getting it shipped to wherever, we are. I'm right here in Singapore, but I think this is definitely, worth, the few quids that we spend, on extra, transport fees or get it shipped over right here in Asia. I think fans around the world are all very excited about this book. And it's something that, we want to maybe deep dive more, but maybe back to KMFDM again, because that's a band that we all love as well. You mentioned, when announced about your appearance on this podcast, that your favorite creation or your favorite artwork is actually Adios. Tell us the story behind that. Yeah.
Well, I was experimenting in a thing called multiples perspective. It's a thing that Jack Kirby used to do. Many years ago, but I invented a thing called the multiple, like what I call firework display. And what it is there are multiple perspective lines and coming out from one picture. So you'll get a blood splash, then you'll get the perspective of the vanishing points of the buildings. Then you'll get, like, for example, someone reaching for something, and then the lines in their shirts will also look like another. So it's basically it's kind of creating lots of miniature explosions within one frame. And I didn't actually do that many after that in that style. That was the one I was most pleased with, because it's one of those things that you really have to jam so much into the picture. And after that, I think it became a bit more streamlined with the work I was doing, not having so many different points of focus. But as I say, as an experiment, that came off, and that is my favorite. I think it's the first one that just seemed to come out of my arm without me actually thinking about it. Do you know what I mean? It's like sometimes when you're so in the zone, it's like when you play pool, you just get to the table, and even if you haven't played for a long time, you're sinking balls, even though you're not even like thinking about it. You're not checking the angle or anything. You just bang, 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 and that's why I like that picture so much.
There is another cover that is quite unforgettable. I think it's the one that was never released, right? I think the cover for Virus. Maybe tell us the backstory behind the Virus cover by KMFDM as well.
Oh, well, there was no big backstory, really. I mean, they said to me that they wanted an artwork for Virus. I came up with that picture, and I was like pretty sure that they would love it, but they kind of thought that it looked a bit too heavy metal or gothic, and so because of the Grim Reaper and everything, so they didn't use it. And they went with I did another one for them, but that one didn't really blow their skirts up at the time, as I remember. It's just a kind of a genre thing, I think, but I can see what they meant. I still think it's a fantastic sleeve, and I think especially now it really seems to be it seems to work better now than it did then, for obvious reasons.
And of course, we also need to put a spotlight on your other work for other musicians, especially Massive Attack and the Mad Professor remix album. I think this is one that also stays long in the memory because it's basically your trademark, but I think it's probably more. How should I maybe put it? It's probably have more things going on. It seems like an artwork that probably epitomizes the music of Massive Attack. And this is a Professor remixed album as well, right?
Yeah, I mean that's such a funny story behind that, because I know Massive Attack from back when they were Wild Bunch, when they were all like kids in Bristol, and I've always known Del. She used to live next door to my girlfriend in Montpellier in Bristol, and so yeah, we always saw them hanging around at the Dugout Club and stuff, and so. Obviously, years later, they become immensely successful, and they contacted me to do this cover for Mad Professor, and it took like 5 years to do this.
Wow.
Because they're almost impossible to get hold of, and it's they're always on tour somewhere around the world. So I'd send them an email, and then like 6 weeks later, we get, we're still interested in doing it. Send us some more roughs. And I said, well, I did send you some roughs about a year ago, and we just carry on going like that. But eventually we did it, and it turned out quite nicely. Not my normal style really, because I wanted to really integrate some of their stuff. That's why I put all the bugs in there, to sort of link it with mezzanine. I've no idea what happens to that. I don't know if it got a broad release. I didn't really see many reviews for it or anything, but there you go.
It's incredible. It took 5 long years. Sometimes the longer it takes, right? The sweeter it is when it's finally being completed. So I think it's another artwork that got fans really excited. We're now gonna maybe back it up a little bit, and before we go back to talk more about the Brute collection, maybe tell us, from the beginning, how did you get started, in the design and illustration work, and who were your early influences early on in your career?
Right. Okay. Sure. I was quite lucky actually, because my father was an artist, a really, really highly prolific marine and landscape artist, and my mother worked in a newsagent. So with his teaching and also the availability of every single comic I wanted, my mum would buy for me. I already had like a pretty good artistic education before I was about 5 or 6, and so by the time I got to proper school, I was like winning all these prizes, and everyone just assumed that I would go into art. So when I actually did go to art school, I was just so disappointed about how fucking boring it was. Draw apples. Where's all the naked girls? I mean, and then on my very first day, this guy said, "Okay, if you won't draw apples, how about this?" And he took me to this big showcase, opened it up, and there was a jar with a fetus in it, and he said, "Draw that." So I just grabbed hold of it, so annoyed, and just smashed it on the floor and ran out. And that was my art education. It lasted less than a morning. But I went straight from there to doing birthday cards for people, then business cards, logos, doing stuff for local newspapers, post band flyers for bands and things. And so by the time I got to like the late 70s, my girlfriend there was so sick of me saying that I wasn't making any money from my artwork. She compiled this vast amount of sketches and doodles and stuff, and gave it to a printer. And he came to my house on my birthday and just dumped this big package of 1,000 copies of my first comic. I had absolutely no idea how he'd managed to collate it all together, and said, "Stop moaning, now get out there and fucking sell them." So I went, right, that's a challenge. So me and my girlfriend went to all the festivals in the Merseyside area, Manchester, and we would just go there, take a tent, and just sit there and just sell books. And they sold like hotcakes. People were buying 5 at a time. Then we went to Glastonbury, sold even more. Then I did another one, took those to Amsterdam, sold a lot. And I was so. At that time, I'd met Malcolm. Malcolm was had gone to prison after being attacked by the police, and we were writing these stories together. We basically just got sick of selling. There was no gossip, so we just started making up stuff. And eventually, we got so many stories. We called them the Savage Thunder franchise, and it was just basically all these stories, westerns, stuff about Romans and seamen and. But with people from our hometown, and we'd send it to each other. Really, really funny stuff. I mean, I wish we still had like the long versions of them. But I started lampooning different types of different authors from different genres, and one of them was Richard Allen, who did the Skinhead and Suedehead and Boot Boy books, which every schoolboy in the 70s just worshipped this guy. He was a terrible writer, but he just wrote very exciting hack. Pulp, and so we decided we were going to start getting these pulp stories we've written into the local paper, and the local paper said too many words. He said, if you're going to have to put it in the classified, and you have to pay per word. And so we went, well, we can't afford this many words. So we basically started hacking these stories down smaller and smaller and smaller, and just leaving in the moments of impact and the sex and the car crashes and people being shot, and just formed this language called Woodspeak, which we created from the blurb that you get on the back of paperbacks, tabloid journalism, and all these pulp books and the romance novels that we've been writing, and amalgamated into a hybrid type of literature, if you like, called Woodspeak. And it's really funny because years later, the tabloids actually started writing in these Woodspeak type articles. And I was like, going, my God, it's catching on. And this is another reason why I want the book to be seen now, to see that we were really ahead of our time and that the world is actually catching up with this way of writing. I mean, we've got a story in here that is only 1 word long, and we used to do things like that all the time, just imagining that each word was costing us money. So let's see if we can do it shorter and briefer and, more dynamic, I guess, and because we edited it so much that it leaves very, very little room for maneuvering, which is like kind of difficult to write, but it also makes it really enjoyable to read, and it still really, really makes me laugh. And the kids would go, "What are you laughing at, Daddy?" Because while I was editing the book, because the story still, some of the stories I think have kind of changed since the 80s, but we kind of took out some of the more some of the references that wouldn't make sense to modern readers, but it still retains exactly the same oomph that the original one does. It's a real punch,
This is an amazing story, and I'm getting goosebumps hearing it. And of course, this is a show where we have a lot of creatives tuning in. We also have some, brand marketing people who watch this podcast live on LinkedIn. So we're going to have to ask some questions regarding, the industry where you're from, where you actually worked in advertising industry for a while. And of course, you were former art director as well for BBDO. So maybe can you tell us whether working in advertising actually help you to think up things, quickly? And do you normally have many ideas that are sketched out for your client, within a day, if need be? So maybe tell us, your experience working and surviving in the advertising industry.
Well, I think, working in advertising is like being an actor. You've got to be a certain type of person. It's not like, if you want to be an actor, you can't just learn the lines and put the suit on and go out and hit your mark. It's a real, it's something inside you, and with advertising, it's basically not having any soul. No, but what happened was, the thing is, I told you about my father. He's very prolific. He would do 5 paintings a week sometimes, And I was always brought up with that, with being prolific, and like Jack Kirby, you know, my favorite artist of all time. He used to do like, you know, 5 or 6 26-page titles a month, you know. And so when I went to art school, and these people who are being revered for spending like 3 years on a painting, I mean, fucking yawn, you know, who's got time for that, you know? So I've always had this thing, I wanted to make money, I wanted to get out there and work. And what advertising taught me was how to catch the imagination. Like, for example, when I was working for Bulmers on the Diamond White Cider campaign, they took us out and showed us some billboards. And I realized what was the philosophy behind billboards is that, like, they have to burn the poster has to burn itself onto your retina, because you're going past that at, like, you know, 70 miles an hour, you know. So it's got to be fun, you know. It's still got to be on the back of your eye as you know, come off the exit, you know. And so I think that's what advertising taught me. And the whole thing that sometimes someone coming into the room and going, change everything, you know. I mean, I've seen people come from an art background, and that just breaks them, you know what I mean? Someone saying, you've got 2 hours, I want 17 more new ideas. Now, you know, it breaks some people, but when Malcolm and I were in advertising, what we used to do is come up with 10 ideas and make 4 of them so, you know, revoltingly violent or sexist or something like that, that there's no way that they would go for them. And they ended up picking the 2 that we liked, you know. And that was how we got around it. But a lot of people just can't do that in advertising. And I'd say it can be really frustrating. And when I worked for BBDO, I didn't last very long there, because you would constantly get these people coming in there and, like, you know, just coming in for a free lunch. They owned a brewery, you know, they sort of look at your stuff and they go, no. But they had no idea what they wanted. They just wanted you to come up with 1,000 things, and they go through them like, you know, photo fit parade. Yes, no. And a lot of people can't do that. But as I say, because of my training with my dad, and also working on computer games, you really have to work hard and you've got to have your idea hat on before your hand even starts working. And if you can't do it, then you're not going to last very long. I'm sure everybody who's ever worked for an advertising agency in the art department has been at some point in their lives an alcoholic or a drug addict. It's shocking, you know. I mean, like, when I've worked at some advertising agencies, and we would smoke like 2 bowls of weed before, like, starting work at 10 o'clock in the morning, you know. And not to come up with ideas, but just to numb you for having to talk to the clients, you know.
I could imagine it must be like, you know, really, you know, sitting in your cubicle and really hating life, right? To be in an environment like that. So the moment when you got out of that industry, it must be like freedom for you, absolute freedom.
BBDO in Prague is absolutely beautiful. It sets in this like 12th century church up on a hill in Vítkov overlooking the river, and it's absolutely stunning. It's probably the best place I've ever worked, you know. And when, you know, most of the time we spent our time out on the roof, you know, just talking about how we want to kill the clients, and would we get any awards. And it was really nice. I've worked in worse places. I mean, advertising in London's, I actually preferred it because people are more desperate in London, I think, you know, to come up with these ideas and get paid, you know. And so, you know, so in Prague, you would sort of high five, you know, when you got a client to accept the job. But in London, we would go on like kind of like 7-day benders when we got a green light from a client, because of the amount of stress and what we were paying for rent and everything. It's, you know, it's. But as I say, it's a really, really great training. If you can survive that, you can go through the foxholes of advertising and movies and come out the other end with your brain still intact. You've won the game as far as I'm concerned. It's, you know, being an actual artist with paints and brushes in the garage, you know, it's like ping pong compared to World War III, you know.
This is
or anywhere.
amazing. I really love this. Your experience of working at BBDO, and of course, it's kind of like reflective of how when an artist wants to do what they love, but at the same time they have to handle meeting the client's demands, and of course to work in an environment where most of the time it's also a pretty stressful and toxic environment. It's actually great to be, taking yourself out of that environment and being able to continue to do what you love, right, on your own terms. I think this is what all artists are striving for. Yeah.
Well, to an extent, I mean, I sometimes think that like complete freedom is an enemy of an artist. I mean, I think sometimes workarounds to demands by clients can actually make you come up with stuff that you would never think of if you were just left to your own devices. And that's why I do treasure my experience there, because you're not having people patting you on the head and going, "Oh my God, you're so creative." They're surrounded by creative, they're 10 a penny, so you have to work extra hard, and you have to, use their suggestions as a way to come up with it, like, "Hey, I never thought of that." It's like having a comedian who needs a straight guy. Do you know what I mean? You need someone to feed you the lines so you can come back with the punchline. And I think that the clients, as long as they're not too horrible and can actually help you bring out more in yourself. Especially when I worked in TV, the whole idea of can we get 3 more jokes in this bit? And like that's like really hard work. Like writing humor for TV, especially when you're shooting in 5 minutes and it's going out almost live the same night. It's that is really punishing, but you spend the whole time laughing. I mean, I loved working in TV. I would still be there if it hadn't been for Malcolm.
This is incredible. Yeah, we're definitely gonna have to ask you the next question as well. What is your favorite and least favorite thing about the design and illustrating industry? And you mentioned about Jack Kirby, right? So what are your favorite sources of inspiration other than Jack Kirby?
I'm not inspired by anybody. I mean, Jack Kirby is one of my favorite artists, but I don't really think maybe the big hands, but I mean, there's a lot of artists I really admire, but the thing is, I always thought that they need to, I have to try and explain. It's how I got in the business of freelance art was, I was, always looking for posters to put on my wall, and even the artists I like, I was going, yeah, it's not that, Wally Wood, yeah, that's not Steranko, it's great, but some of them always lacked something, and for me, I think I suddenly said, I'm going to do something that I can put on my own wall, and why not, think of what's missing in these pictures and add that thing, And so I really like Frans Masereel, for example, but I find his stuff isn't coming straight out of the page at you. I also like old Bollywood movie posters from the 60s and 70s because they do come out of the page at you. And so it's putting that together with like the propaganda style, which I really like because it's very flat and uses minimal amount of color. I just, as I said, kind of used a technique to try and amalgamate those things, but I wouldn't say they actually influenced me. I mean, it's difficult to actually. In more, as I say, more or less comes from, I think, the way you interpret any image that you look at, because I believe that you can, when you're born with certain images already there on your brain, and you just kind of discover as you get older various types of media that kind of resemble most that thing that you've been born with in your brain. Same with music as well. How come you're drawn to certain types of music? What is it that makes people love heavy metal when they're 5, and then they still love that sound when they get old? I think it's because it's all kind of pre-coded in your brain, like some sort of like DNA receptor for certain vibrations or colors or shapes or something. And so as I was growing up and discovering the Constructivists and the Italian Futurists, people like Di Piero, and it was almost like, hang on. I'm sure I've seen these before, and maybe I saw them when I was a kid, but it wasn't. It was like some sort of like memory, vague subconscious memory that these things kind of resembled, if you understand what I mean. I always remember once when I was about 8 or 9, and I had to have a tooth removed. And in those days, they gave you morphine gas. And and they plugged it onto my face. And I had this dream, this amazing dream. And I could always remember it. It was this like guy wandering across a wasteland with these like spiky clouds and burnt out looking trees. And he had his shirt collar pulled up. And he was like slugging. And it was all in black and white, And that was I think that was the first thing that I can remember that inspired me. And then later on, when I found Lynd and Masereel and people like that, Otto Dix, I realized, my God, it's like they looked into my head while I was having my teeth taken out, But obviously, but yeah, I just think you just discover things that are already in your mind. Kind of it.
You mentioned quite a bit about movies being a big inspiration. So would you say that you derived most of your inspiration from the movies, and also having that ability to freeze frame certain scenes from a film is actually very useful in creating your work?
Yeah, definitely. It's I think the last time I used some stills from like Munich for a couple of things, because I really like the way Spielberg creates scenes where he sets certain objects at like right angles, and then he'll use a perspective going past and then frame it with like a bridge or something. And I like that sort of stuff. I think it's more cinematic than you don't really see this sort of composition in movies. Sorry, in comics. But I find it more evocative using scenes that are all they're already causing this kind of emotion in me, and I realize that I am kind of fascinated by certain compositions. As anybody who knows my artwork for KMFDM knows that there are certain similarities in some of the techniques I use, because I just find that, for example, I don't do a lot of characters in mid-shot. I tend to use a lot of close-ups, like they do in the movies, and a lot of my pictures have this like forced perspective with the face really, really close up, so you can see the anger and the lines on the face. Lines on the face I don't understand how people aren't more interested in drawing faces, because things like eyebrows, for example, can tell 17 different types of stories. What I used to do was in the 80s, I would draw all the faces but wouldn't put any eyebrows on them. And then what I would do is I would tell a story just by using the eyebrows. So someone's got their eyebrows up like this, and their hands out, they're telling a story. Another guy's like this, quizzical eyebrow, So you can tell a story just with eyebrows, And as I say, this is also something I've got from close-ups in the movies, especially like Sergio Leone with the dollar movies. I mean, that's just, I think that's just the encyclopedia of close-up expressions. And Once Upon a Time.
Amazing. Yeah. I think you named up some really great films and movie directors as well. So these are all, people that we admire, greatly respect, as well as, seek, their stories as well for inspirations. Are there any advice that you would give to an aspiring and a professional illustrator and designer, or maybe someone out there who is currently, watching this live stream on Facebook, Twitch, or YouTube, and they come across you and they really, are very impressed by your work, and they want to maybe hear from you what you would advise them in order to maybe one day to be like you as well, to be able to design an album cover for their favorite industrial artist or musician or even a hip-hop artist?
Well, Well, first of all, I would advise getting an agent or a manager of some sort. If you don't like asking people for money, or you've got any paranoia about how much you're worth, then you need a middleman, someone who's going to do that for you and say yes or no for you. The other thing is, and I always say this to my students, is you should learn another trade, because this business has notoriously long gaps in between paydays. So you might want to learn something that uses your skills. Like I used to do painting and decorating. I did like sign writing, anything with a brush. And I would advise, when I was teaching in Seattle, I advised all my students to take up painting and decorating, and say, you might laugh. I said, but like the control you need for putting gloss on window frames is going to stand you in good stead in your career. And also you can make some money while you're starving in your garage.
That's amazing. That's a fantastic advice. Get an agent. I think that's something that everyone who aspires to be like you, right? And if they are still young and still at the beginning, early stage of their career, they should bear that in mind. And of course, for those art directors for like small advertising agencies, they will probably, also fully identify, with what you just said about, being able to survive in the industry and being able to actually make a good career out of it, and doing art as a living as well, right? And dealing with client expectations. There's always a huge difference between doing art for fun and designing as a career. We're going to move on and maybe talk about the mural that you did, I think, in Italy. Tell us, how that came about, and were you kind of like wishing that, they wouldn't cover it up after only 5 days? Do you kind of wish that it's still available for people to go there and visit and admire your mural artwork?
No, I'm actually more fascinated with the idea of people in the far future digging it up and finding it. that's kind of what we knew they were. We knew they were going to fill it in. But the thing is, we had this guy that we knew called the Wolf. He was a guy that helped us paint a lighthouse, really incredible guy. He's got all the climbing equipment, and the scaffolding was already there, so we didn't need, we used about 10 people from Barga, and we had about 5 or 6 people in our crew, and we did it over, I think, like 2 nights, a day and 2 nights, I think we did, before they had to come back on Monday. And it was kind of surprisingly easy, because we used an abstract that I'd done, so it wasn't as though anybody had to sort of map out faces and things like that. But the thing is, it's that the papers got hold of it before we'd finished, and loads of people came to the bridge to see us finishing it, and that's when they alerted the authorities. And so, but by that, we'd finished it by that night anyway. I mean, like, the Barga police aren't really like, Starsky and Hutch or anything. So, so yeah, we finished it and got pissed the next night. Got the plane back, but we didn't get paid for it or anything. It was just for a joke, really.
Unfortunately, somebody or there are people who cover this incredible event, right? Where we can have, still pictures where we can actually admire, how it looks like before it was covered up, and it looks really amazing. And something of this scale requires a team of, like what you mentioned, a group of 10 people to actually direct this, right? How long did it take for you to complete this mural?
3 days.
3 days in total. Wow.
Yeah, 3 days. 3 days and 2 nights.
3 days and 2 nights.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
I got like a really bad sunburn on the back of my neck. I was in agony for weeks,
What was the message you were trying to put out with this mural art?
But the thing is that the guy, the Wolf, the guy who wanted to do it, he used all his redundancy money to fly us out there, and his wife went absolutely mental. I don't think they're together anymore, But it was just a big lad's jape. We used to do lots of things like that, like bog art and just performance stuff, just stuff that we knew would get washed away,
So I saw, there are some letters there. So did you also have the luxury of having like a like a lift that can move around to allow you to climb up and actually reach the corners of the wall and actually get all your entire wall covered with your artwork?
No. I mean, as I was saying, that the scaffolding, it was already up there, because they were working on it, and they had all this like scaffolding that was keeping the earth from the hill from coming sliding down, and so we were just able to use that. I mean, we didn't even need to have a ladder; we just used their ladder. I'm sure I'm sure this video is going to lead to my arrest.
You mentioned that you were born in Liverpool, in Merseyside, right? So specifically, which part of Merseyside?
Wallasey on the Wirral Peninsula.
Okay, so when was the last time you were back in Merseyside? And like for me personally, I paid a visit to Merseyside a year ago when I went there to watch a game. I think Liverpool against Wolves in Anfield, and I was amazed and stunned by the amount of art around the city, and there were many mural wall art that really caught my attention, especially football mural art. Is that your thing as well? And the last time when you're back, what were the mural artwork that caught your attention in Merseyside?
Well, I didn't see any murals when I was there. I mean, it's been a few years since I went back. I went back for my mother's funeral. God, that's a few years ago, 5 years ago. And they hadn't yet started, but what they've done with New Brighton, which is like an old seaside resort on the tip of the peninsula, some bright lad has turned the whole place into a mural city now. So I believe there's a couple of good ones there. I can't say I've actually seen any, but they're just really trying to put it on the map artistically.
Do you plan to do another mural artwork in the near future?
No, I'm too old for that shit, man. Really, it's like, I mean, standing on the rung of a ladder for like 5 hours. No way.
Definitely not for someone with kids, right? It's no longer feasible to pull off a stunt like that anymore.
Nah. I mean, it almost killed us. We were like young guys when we did that. Actually, I wasn't that young. But the thing is, I wouldn't. If someone said to me, "Would I do a mural?" Obviously, there are ways of doing it without having to go up ladders. So yeah, I would still take on those jobs, but I don't get offered them so much anymore.
Well, we're almost at the 1 hour mark of the show. Can you believe it? Where did the time go, right? Because this is such an absorbing conversation. I could, chat with you all day long, just talking about your body of art. And of course, so many great album cover artwork that you've done for KMFDM, and maybe go through one after another. There's so many great album artwork that I've created for them, but due to the time limitation of this program, and obviously, we want to also let you go and have a rest after this. Maybe do you have a last message for anyone who's tuning in right now, who are maybe big fans and supporters of your work, and of those who have only just discovered you through this podcast for the first time ever?
I don't know, really. I mean, it's difficult these days to say be yourself and just go for it, because I think people's avenues of expression are going to be severely limited soon. And all I can say is, try and deal with the compromises you have to make and make them work for you in a positive way. I mean, I'm sure there's loads of people right now, knocking out albums, putting them out for free, just getting it out there, no matter how. But I still think that every art will always survive. You don't. It's many other medias have come and gone, but art will always survive. Plates and cups and saucers will always, be designed. Prints on towels and posters will still go on. But you just got to make sure you get paid, because there's anybody out there thinking of working for free, I'll fucking hunt you down, really, because you're ruining it for the next generation. That's what I would say.
And of course, remember to get an agent, right? So, this is a great inspiration. Yeah, this is an incredible, an hour or so. And thank you so much for taking the time to provide us, with this interview. And, you have told us so many great things about your design and illustrating background and what made you become a designer and all that. So, we would love to invite you back on in the future and maybe discuss more of your work in making music videos for KMFDM and animations and other work that you have done for other clients.
I didn't even get onto the night I played with Joy Division.
Exactly. There's so many other stories to tell, and due to time limitation, we're definitely gonna have to invite you back again. This could be a brand new series where we just talk about your work.
Sure. I mean, really, I talk a lot, and I've got like a hell of a lot of stories because I've worked in so many different branches of the media, and anytime you want, I'll be back.
Fantastic. That would be an awesome day to have you back on again. So thank you so much. Stay safe and enjoy Prague, which is a beautiful city. I miss Prague so much. Hopefully, next year when I come back for a visit, I can do a sit-down in-person interview with you. I think that would be an awesome day as well.
Yeah, as long as you buy the beer.
Beer is so cheap in Prague, right? I think it's £1 per pint.
Oh, yeah. It's even cheaper if you go to the supermarket.
It's cheaper than water. That was what I was told the last time I was there. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm definitely looking forward to visit you and your family as well. So let's continue to have this conversation in the future. And please stay safe. And thank you once again. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Aidan Hughes, the man. See ya. Goodbye.
See you soon, man. Bye-bye now.
Good night. Bye.